All right. So, Michelle,
Yes, everyone.
is it true that it's formed within the substance of the psoas major?
Yes, it's true.
That's true. Okay. So if I draw the psoas major at this point, and then I say, okay, so this point, this is lateral. So going this way, it's lateral. And then going this way, it's actually medial, right? There are nerves that exit, there are nerves that actually exit lateral and medial to this structure here. So where does the genitofemoral nerve exit? Lateral, at the front, or medial?
At the front,
At the
anterior.
front, anterior. That's very good. So genitofemoral, there until it divides. That's good. And what about there's another branch. So tell me another branch of the lumbar plexus that you know.
There's the obturator nerve,
The obturator nerve. Does it exit medial or lateral?
medial.
Medial, that's correct. The obturator nerve exiting medial is going to the pelvic region. And then which other branch?
The femoral,
The femoral nerve. Okay, exiting medial or lateral?
lateral.
Lateral, that's good. And then it moves at this point close to the muscle, being sandwiched between the psoas and a band of muscle at this point, which is the iliacus. So it's between the iliopsoas groove, right? So it's actually within the iliopsoas groove. All right, then another branch of the lumbar plexus.
The lateral cutaneous nerve
The
of the
lateral
thigh.
nerve of the thigh. And where is it coming from?
The lateral side.
The lateral side. That's good. So can you see something that is really happening there? If you're involved with the medial aspects of the thigh and you're involved with the pelvic region, you have to exit medial. You have to go where you have to go. That's medial. If you're involved with the lower limb, the anterior compartments and the lateral compartments, that you have to exit lateral. So can you see what's really happening there, right? And then for the genitofemoral nerve is divided. So the genitofemoral nerve is biased between the femur, yes, right, and also the perineal region, right? So that in that way, then we actually see that the genitofemoral nerve will then say, let me just exit anterior. I can't be choosing any side. I'm both genitofemoral. Then other two branches that are coming from the lumbar plexus is the ilioinguinal and the iliohypogastric. Are we together?
Yes.
All right, so that is about the psoas and the lumbar plexus. Let's come and look at this structure at this point, right? Let's come and look at this structure at this point, right? Looking at this structure, so the testis during development is descending, right, through this canal, right? Can you explain something that you are seeing at this point concerning the coverings of the testis from the skin until you touch the testis? So can you tell me the layers that you have to be piercing from the skin going downwards?
Right. So there's the skin, there's the superficial fascia. The dartos muscle is the fatty layer of the superficial fascia. And then there's,
Wait,
yes.
within the superficial fascia, do we find fat or we find a muscle?
Oh, it's a muscle.
It's a muscle. You don't
The
need
dartos
fat.
muscle.
And we actually want to
No,
lose it.
I say that the dartos muscle replaces the fatty layer of the superficial fascia.
So it's called the dartos fascia, right?
Yes.
Then from there, where do we go?
The external phlegmatic fascia, which is coming from the external oblique.
No, before you get there, there's something underneath that. Underneath the dartos fascia, there's fascia there. The membranous layer of the abdomen is called what?
The Cole's fascia.
All right, so there's a Colles fascia there, right? Which was the Scarpa's fascia under the abdomen. So from the Colles fascia, now we're going to the
External spermatic fascia.
the external spermatic fascia, which is continuation of
The external oblique.
external oblique. That's correct. And what about there? Where do we go?
I then go to the cremasteric fascia.
The cremasteric fascia formed from who?
From the internal oblique.
From the internal oblique. Okay, then from there we go on to which one?
The internal spermatic fascia.
The internal spermatic fascia, which is coming from who?
It's coming from the fascia transversalis.
Fascia transversalis. That's really interesting. So we now see as the testes are passing downwards, it doesn't pull the transversus abdominis. So the muscle, the transversus abdominis, is then not pulled, right? So it will be left at this point. So if this is the transversus abdominis, it will just be left at that point. So it really will not be, it won't be pulled out, all right? So we don't have the transversus abdominis forming anything at that point, all right? So we said we're gonna look at the spermatic cord and look at the structures that we find within the spermatic cord and all that. Anyway, so from there, we then go on to the two layers of the tunica vaginalis. So this is basically peritoneal membranes that were carried there, right? The tunica vaginalis, right? Remains actually of the processus vaginalis. Then from there, we go on to the tunica albuginea, right? Which is the dense core of the test. So can you tell me what type of connective tissue is the tunica albuginea?
You just said dense.
I just said dense.
Yes.
No, but I'm asking you what type, just tell me what you know.
Dense.
So it's actually dense connective tissue irregular. Remember, connective tissue of the capsules, it's dense connective tissue irregular. So it's dense connective tissue irregular. And remember, it gives septa that goes deep within the testis, right? Separating it into compartments where you have the seminiferous tubules, right?
Yes.
That's good. All right. So anyway, thank you so much for that. Let's see where else is left there we no longer have. Anyway, so let me come back a bit. Let me come back a bit. Let me come back a bit. There's nothing interesting at that point. There's nothing interesting at that point. There's nothing interesting at that point. Nothing interesting still. There's nothing interesting still. Ah, fine. All right. There. Just to revise. All right. Just to revise. Anyway, let's talk about this part quickly. So anyway, this is the entrance into the pelvis, the true pelvis, right? That's the brim, all right? That's the brim, bounded posteriorly by the promontory, right? Indentation of the sacrum, the anterior indentation of the sacrum. And the promontory is much pronounced in males, right? So it goes forward more in males, such that in males, the pelvis is actually heart-shaped compared to the females, which is actually oval, all right? So for the X's in the females, right? Then that divides the false pelvis from the true pelvis, all right? And then we have organs that we find within the pelvis that remain being true pelvic organs, and organs that can actually come out of the pelvis to lie within the false pelvis. And remember, the false pelvis is part of the abdomen. We actually have got coils of intestines within these fossas, and the appendix also within the right iliac fossa. All right. So anyway, I'll come back to Tinashe. Tinashe, which structures are purely pelvic organs and structures that are pseudo, that can be there and also come out?
A purely pelvic organ is the rectum, one. Another purely pelvic organ is the prostate gland. Another purely pelvic organ. Sick when it gets out. This one completely purely pelvic. I think those are the ones that I know.
All right, that's correct.
Yeah, the prostate and the rectum is ones that I know definitively. The rest, the other pelvic organs.
All right. So the bladder gets up during filling, right? All right. So anyway, can you quickly just go through the blood supply of the bladder?
Of the blood. All right. The blood is supplied by the superior vesical artery and the inferior vesical artery. The superior vesical artery and inferior vesical artery come from the internal iliac arteries anterior division. Sorry. Then the venous drainage of the bladder will be into the corresponding veins. Then also, if I'm not mistaken, some of the venous drainage of especially I think around the neck of the bladder, is continuous or drains into the prostatic venous plexus.
Okay.
Which drains into the internal iliac.
Right. So the prostatic venous plexus can drain into the internal iliac veins, or it can drain where else?
The vertebral veins.
The valveless vertebral vein plexuses. Okay, so that leads on to metastasis of cancers to either the vertebral column or the cranium. All right, fine. Concerning the inferior vesical artery, in the females, it changes its name. It's now called the?
It's called the uterine artery.
It's called the uterine artery, no?
Wait. It's called the uterine artery. It should be vaginal artery.
The vaginal artery, yes, that's called the vaginal artery. And so that's good. So the superior vesical artery is basically going to be supplying the structures that or basically going to be supplying the superior surface of the blood, right? And then the inferior vesicle is going to be supplying the lower parts. That means the inferior vesicle will somehow also then contribute to the blood supply of the prostate gland, right? Also give some blood supply to the seminal vesicles, right? So now we know the prostate have to receive that blood. And then because the prostate, its relation in males, obviously in males, the prostate lies anterior to the rectum, right? And the rectum is, okay, it's retroperitoneal, yes, but it's not completely covered as well with peritoneal, meaning that it basically has got three parts that we talk about when it comes to the covering of the prostate. The first part, which is the superior third, is whereby the anterior and the lateral surfaces are covered. The middle is whereby we only have the anterior surface covered, and then the lower third is whereby we don't have anything covering any part. That means peritoneum is folded back, right, on the superior surface of the bladder. That means now the prostate is in relation with the lower part of the rectum, where we have the rectum changing into the anal canal. So we can actually have cancers of the rectum spreading to the prostate, or the prostate coming back to the rectum. Hence, the rectal veins, not the rectal veins, the rectal arteries, all right? The rectal arteries also supply the prostate gland and the seminal vesicles because of that relation. The rectal artery, right, also don't supply that. And when we talk of the rectal arteries, we have what, three rectal arteries, if I'm not mistaken, the superior, middle, and inferior. Can you tell me where we get each of those?
Right. The superior rectal artery is a continuation of the inferior mesenteric artery.
At which point?
We mean where the inferior mesenteric artery comes from?
Yes, the inferior mesenteric artery is now called the
superior rectal artery. All right. Should I move on to the next one?
Oh, you haven't answered me on that one. Where exactly do they change the name?
Oh, the way does the inferior mesenteric artery become the superior rectal artery?
Mm-hmm.
Or I think as it passes over the pelvic brim.
That's correct. As it passes over the pelvic brim. And the rectum ends at which point? Where does the rectum start and end?
All right. The rectum should start at the level of S3.
Mm-hmm.
Then it should end at the tip of the coccyx.
That's good. So that's something to really note, right? So it's starting at the level of S3, not ending there. Then it's ending there when it bends backwards to become the anal canal. So we're talking about the superior rectal artery. Then the middle rectal arteries are coming from where?
Middle rectal artery are coming from internal iliac.
Internal iliac. All right, that's correct. So those are the ones that are supplying the prostate and the seminal vesicles. And then the inferior rectal are coming from where?
Inferior rectal is coming as a branch of the internal pudenda.
The internal pudental.
artery.
That's correct. So you need to understand those sources actually of blood supply, just in case. And then let's remember the anal canal and the difference between the upper half and the lower half in terms of embryology, right? And the histology as well, all right? The transition that we have in the epithelium and the change in blood supply, as well as the derivatives actually that are actually coming from embryology. All right. Thank you so much, Tinashe. All right, let me then move on to something else that I can pick up from here so we can discuss that. So these are dermatomes that I'm talking about, T7, L1, and then T10, all right? All right, very good. Tari,
Yes.
Good. Now we are appreciating the anterior abdominal wall and the posterior abdominal wall and lymph drainage, right? And the landmarks being the umbilicus and posteriorly above the iliac crest. All right. So can you see that here, lymph from the anterior abdominal wall above the umbilicus is going to the anterior group of the axillary lymph nodes, right?
Yeah.
And lymph below that is going to the superficial inguinal nodes, which is the horizontal group, right?
Yes.
And posterior above the iliac crest, it's going to the posterior group of iliac nodes, right? And then
Yes.
below that, they'll also move to the lateral group of the horizontal group of the superficial inguinal nodes. Can you tell me about the axillary group of lymph nodes? The axillary group of lymph nodes, the groups that you can still remember.
There's the anterior group, lateral group, posterior group, the central group, and the infraclavicular isn't part of it, but they included
together.
it, and the the forgetting the last one, its name. The central, did I say the central group?
Yes, you said it just now.
Well, the last A.
All right.
I
So if
forgot
the
what
apical, the posterior, right?
the
The infraclavicular, the central, the anterior, and the lateral, right? Okay, that's good. Now let's talk about where do these guys steal their lymph. All right. So for the anterior group, we talked of the anterior abdominal wall above the level of the umbilicus. Which structure do you also remember giving lymph to the anterior group?
the lateral quadrant of the
Lateral
breast.
quadrants of the breast. Then that means that group drains the greater part of the breast, right? Okay.
Oh, I didn't know that, but thank you.
All right, so they drain the greater part of the breast. And then you just talked about the breast. Which quadrant of the breast is most prone to cancers?
I don't.
Okay, so it's the upper outer quadrant, all right? Upper
Mm.
outer quadrant. So remember the gluteal region where it's safe to give an injection. Which quadrant is it?
The upper lateral quadrant.
The upper outer quadrant or the upper lateral. So the same as the breast. That is the region that is most prone to cancer. Then the posterior group, we talked of where it will actually drain. Some books will say it will also drain some parts of the breast, but anyway, let's stick to the anterior. And then the infraclavicular, we'll talk about it. The central, we'll talk about it. The lateral group, where does the lateral group get its lymph?
From the medial aspect of the arm and forearm.
The medial aspects of the arm and the forearm. Via which lymph nodes?
The ones that travel with the basilic vein and also from the supratrochlear lymph nodes.
The supratrochlear, those are the ones that I wanted to hear. So now we remember still that the supratrochlear nodes are found at the level where you find the base of the cubital fossa, right? And they're not within the cubital fossa, but actually found outside of the cubital fossa, but on the roof. All right. Then what about the lateral aspects of the limb, the upper limb? Where does the lymph go actually?
The infraclavicular.
The infraclavicular nodes, right? So they're actually going into the infraclavicular nodes, and they'll be moving with which vein?
The cephalic.
The cephalic vein, the cephalic vein. And remember the basilic vein joining with the vena combitante, right, of the brachial artery then forms the axillary vein. Okay, so thank you so much for explaining very well concerning these lymph nodes that we have at this point. All right, so anyway, let's talk about the development of the pancreas. So let's talk about the development of the pancreas. And I want to talk about that with Arno Tida. Arno.
Yes, I'm here.
All right. So can you explain to us or tell us what you remember concerning the development of the pancreas?
What I remember. I remember that we have a dorsal mesogy, right?
Yes.
So in the dorsal mesogy, we have the dorsal, what was it? Dorsal pancreatic bud and the ventral pancreatic bud. So in development of pancreas, they are separated. There's a dorsal and a ventral. And then later these two buds. So from the ventral bud, we have what we call the antennae process. I remember. And the inferior part of the head of the pancreas. That's what we have from the ventral bud, which is close to the bladder. And then the dorsal bud, the dorsal pancreatic bud is where we find the main pancreatic bud. So yeah, that's what I remember.
All right.
So,
okay.
With this rotation of the water, it influences the movement of the ventral and dorsal pancreatic bud.
All right, that's correct. So what the type of rotation, is it a clockwise or an anti-clockwise rotation?
It should be anti-clockwise. I don't remember.
All right. So if we have the gut and we have the dorsal bud at this point and the smaller ventral bud at this point, the rotation is actually a clockwise rotation. So it's actually a clockwise rotation. So this guy comes to lie finally at this point. This one rotates like that. So if this bud, right? So if this bud rotates in a clockwise, right, direction, that results in the ventral bud resting at the lower and dorsal surfaces of the major or the posterior bud. Then if it does the opposite, actually, it can actually choke, if I can use that word, the duodenum at that part, and that is called the annular pancreas. So if it goes in reverse, that is actually called the annular pancreas. So, you know, clinicals are clinicals. You may actually have two anterior buds, one going that way and the other one going that way. Still choke the duodenum. Then concerning the duct system, we appreciate that we have the major pancreatic duct. So we have the major pancreatic duct. And so if I can draw it in this color. So the major pancreatic duct is basically running at this point, and then it will like do that, and then let the ampulla vata open, right? And then the minor pancreatic duct, right? Of Santorini, then if it's there, it will move and then open on the minor papilla, right? So the question is, from development, right? So from development, actually, where do we get the main pancreatic duct and the minor pancreatic duct in terms of two ducts? So now when you're explaining, tell me in terms, don't say bud, tell me in terms of ducts. So tell me in terms of the anterior duct, right? So the anterior duct, which is the duct of the ventral bud, and the dorsal duct, right? So the ventral duct, right, and the dorsal duct. So I want to hear that. So anyway, up to you, Anotida.
So I think the main pancreatic duct, it's formed from the entire ventral pancreatic duct, and then dorsal pancreatic duct, part of it, I think the distal part of the dorsal pancreatic duct. These two form the main pancreatic duct. And then I'm sorry for the background. And then for the accessory pancreatic duct, I think it's from the dorsal pancreatic duct, the proximal part.
That's true. That's true. So like you said, this part from here to there is coming from the ventral duct, right? And this part to that part over there is from the dorsal duct. So true or false, the dorsal duct gives both the minor and the major duct. That's true, right? True or false, the dorsal duct is involved in formation of the major. That's also true. True or false, the ventral is also involved in formation of the major. That's true, right? But if they are to say, right, the major pancreatic duct comes from the duct of the ventral bud, that's true. But if they say the ventral bud only, that now becomes false. All right. So if they say the ventral bud only, that now becomes false. Yes, it contributes to the formation of it, but not on all of it. We have a part that actually comes from the dorsal bud. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for the time that we had to just reflect on different aspects of anatomy. We started with abdomen, move on to pelvis, upper limb, and all that. Still, the information is there. I'm glad that you guys are revising and all that. All right. So let's keep on just focusing on whatever we are focusing. And then in these discussions, we can then try and throw our brains in many areas. And then we can then try and consolidate all the information to be one so that things become a bit easier. So anyway, that's it for what I had to do today. So